Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com, and you'll find my 6 podcasts: the Podfather, helping people become podcasters; the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption but with solutions; the Crypto, all things blockchain technology; meditation podcast; speaking podcast; and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. My guest today, serial entrepreneur, boxing coach. You can see, for those watching on Spotify, BitChute, YouTube, and Rumble, you see a nice little belt in the thing. We'll touch on that in a minute. He's an author, not of one book, but 2, and one is co-written with a Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington, which is very impressive. A podcaster, which I always love, and a seasoned podcaster as well. I know you've got a load of episodes. Please welcome Ken Cox.
Thank you for having me, Roy. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no problem. It's, looking forward to this. So, I mean, there's a load to you, but books and different things. But before we delve into, the latest book as well, let us know a bit about Ken. When did you start the boxing? Was that something you've always done, or was it coaching later on?
Yeah, so boxing came along. I grew up in a pretty rough, we fought a lot when I was a kid, right? So there was that. And then I got some jobs as, early in my career, stage management, security at bars, kinds of things, working in bars throughout, extra ways to make money. When you're trying to start your businesses, right? Cash is everything when you're trying to start a business. So bartending ends up being a good job to have as a side gig when you're starting a company. So that led to a lot of fighting and rough housing and stuff like that continued throughout my lifetime. When I was diagnosed with liver disease, I started boxing for fitness. I picked it up and I started doing that almost every single day. Realized that the gym that I was going to was not sustainable. It was not going to be open for very long unless somebody stepped in and started doing something different. So I reached out to the owner and asked him if I could buy the gym. And he sold it to me for, we made a fantastic deal for everybody. And we've been off to the races since. So for the first couple of years, I was just boxing for fitness, hitting the heavy bag, kind of having fun, got more into it. Ended up competing in the Golden Gloves 2019 for St. Louis in the Masters division. I won one fight and lost the next one, and then I ended up getting a walkover in 2022 for the Masters Championship in Golden Gloves in St. Louis. So it's been a fun ride. And then through all of that, owning the boxing school and all those other things, it used to be a boxing gym is what we called it. Now we call it a boxing school because we've adopted all these kids into our gym, and it's just been an amazing string of events that has happened to bring us to where we're at today.
And I suppose when we're talking about the kids as well, because sometimes, especially if you're brought up in a rough neighborhood or if they come from single parents and things like that, I think sometimes they get like the father figure or something like that, it's not that it makes, sometimes people think when you put them into martial arts or you put them into boxing, that they'll go out and they want to fight. A lot of the time they get more discipline and they never want to fight, and they get friendships there as well. And it's just because of the training, the mindset changes as well.
Yes, the friends that you make in combat sports are a different kind of friend. It's friendship forged under extreme conditions, right? And you understand pushing each other to your limits is something that really good friends do. And you try to do that without hurting each other. And it ends up being a beautiful thing.
So your own story, because it kind of goes back to the book, being sober and stuff like that. So did it all kind of happen, getting into the drinking when you were doing the doors and at the bars, or how did you get, when did things start going down for you?
My relationship with alcohol started at birth in reality, right? So my first homestead was in a bar. My mom moved into a bar out of the hospital with me. My stepfather was an alcoholic, and in the neighborhood that I grew up in, sex, drugs, and rock and roll was everywhere, right? That's what it was. So alcohol has been a substantial part of my life since the beginning. Has it caused problems? Absolutely. I was arrested multiple times as a kid, as juvenile, and alcohol was always part of that equation. And as an adult, I've been arrested a handful of times for things that happened while I was drinking. So not until I got my diagnosis of liver disease did I ever even contemplate quitting. Not even for a second. I was a proud alcoholic.
And was it something that when you got your diagnosis, you went cold turkey, or how was the transition to going off it after hearing it?
Yeah, so the story on how we found it was quite bizarre, right? So my day job, I operate data centers. It's what my day job. So basically warehouses of computers. It sounds way fancier than it actually is. So what that means is occasionally I get called into the middle of the night for stuff breaking or whatever. This particular time I was recovering from strep throat, and I was at home. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, and I got a phone call, and I had to go to downtown St. Louis to one of our data centers and work on something. I don't even know what it was, but I was there for an hour or two, finished it up, and I'm leaving. And as I'm walking out, I go to this, what it's called a heat mitigation room. So if you can imagine a 10,000 square foot empty warehouse, nothing in it at all, but it just runs at about 110 degrees Fahrenheit at all times. We just take the heat from the servers and dump them in this room. It's a cheaper way to get rid of the heat. I walk into that room and instantly felt dizzy, didn't know what to do, disoriented, laid down. Ended up going to the hospital that day. Couldn't find anything wrong with me in the emergency room. At my cardiologist the next day, I've got, the EKG, all that stuff hooked up. My blood pressure's shooting up and dropping, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I think I'm dying. The whole time the doc asked me a couple times if I'm still drinking, because I'd always been honest with my doctor. And I'd say, yeah, I'm still drinking. Not even thinking about that I haven't had a drink, right? But he asked me, are you still drinking? So yeah, I'm still drinking. And then finally he says, when was the last time you had a drink? Like, oh, well, I've had strep throat. So it's been like 2 or 3 days since I've had a drink. And he pulled my liver panels, and I was in alcohol-induced liver disease. Pretty high up there. I hadn't hit cirrhosis yet, but my numbers were really, really close. So at that point, he put me on Xanax, probably a far larger dose than I needed. But his point was, if you want to quit drinking today, I'll help you. If you want to get rid of these symptoms, go home and drink, and you'll be dead in a couple of years, but you'll feel fine until that happens. So I made the decision to quit, but the decision to quit was not one that I wanted to do for me. It was because the doctor was telling me to do it. So I could not find, I was pissed that I had to quit, right? I was just angry at the whole situation. I was mad at it. I didn't, so I was doing it. I was quitting in protest instead of for myself at that time.
What was your typical week of drinking? Were you drinking bottles of scotch, or were you on beer, or what? What would you typically drink a week?
It was everything. So, ebbs and flows throughout life for sure, right? From, not my entire life that I wake up to a couple shots of Jaeger, but there's, been several years in a row that would happen. Always have 2 to 4 beers at lunch, 40 ounces, with clients and stuff like that. And then, from 1 o'clock till 6 o'clock, probably another 3 or 4 beers at the office while I'm working, and then off to the nights. So that was either pick up a fifth or go out to the bars until 2 or 3 in the morning. And that was pretty much every day. So, a regular day would be a fifth and a 12-pack. A busy day would be a 20-pack and 2 fifths.
When you kind of decided, you didn't really want to, but the guy in the white coat said, hey, this isn't going to be good. How, did you get support? Like, people around you, and how was it? It must have been very difficult on your mindset, because when your body's used to kind of the toxins like that, it is.
Yeah, so that first withdrawal is very scary, right? Because it's near fatal. Unfortunately, I've gone through that a couple times in life for other reasons, not because of the liver, but I'm detoxed a couple times throughout my life, and it's not something I recommend to any human. So that detox, that first week is just your body's shaking. You can't really control much. It's really, really challenging. After that, though, you tell yourself you can do anything, you can get through this, and you're going to quit cold turkey and all that stuff. But then the Xanax just zombies you. I was a zombie for probably a year and a half, just not happy about anything, just kind of going through life. My wife calls it the year that I took a vacation from everything, right? She's like, you weren't even like you were here, but
the wheel was turning, the hamster was dead, kind of thing. Like,
yeah, it was like, I was not me at all. I was not happy. And then what ends up happening for me is, so I'm doing the routine, right? I'm following the rules. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to the doctor regular, and the liver counts are just dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And then I talked to the doctor, like, I hate the Xanax. It's just horrible. I don't know the drug that they moved me to help me withdraw from Xanax, but it was another one, because I was on, at this point, I'm taking like 4 of those bricks a day. Those Xanax, hated that. Withdrawal from that was just about as miserable, right? And then there's that whole time frame of that. But then the doctor says there's no signs of liver disease from your panels, and I'm like, oh, that's great, so I can drink again. And this is my mindset. He's like, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, well, what about a beer here and there? And he's like, if you can handle a beer every now and then no problem. Well, that ends up, oh, I had a beer tonight, no problem. I'll have a beer tomorrow, oh, no problem. Oh, I can have 2 beers tonight. I can have 4 beers tonight. I can have 6 beers tonight. Gets to the point to where I'm literally booking appointments at the local blood clinic draw place to get my liver panels on my own, so that I can manage, if I drink this much, my liver count goes up this much, and that kind of shit. And it was just absolutely the wrong thing to do, right? This is my relationship with this substance of, it's killing me. I know it's killing me, but I'm going to manage how much poison I intake, so that I can do it slower for some reason. But so I was doing that, and then that did not, that led to more eventually violent outbursts and things like that. So I think at some point when you drink for as long as I did, when you drink, you lose your ability to maintain control of yourself. And that's where I'm at now. I can't, if I start drinking, I don't know how to stop. And then I lose control of my other abilities to not be a violent human.
And how impactful was this on your wife? Because obviously she's living with that.
She's a saint. She's an amazing woman in every single way, shape, and form. So it's challenging, and I recommend to anybody, make sure that you're having open, honest communication. Make sure that you've got therapists on standby. Make sure that they're going through therapy, that they have groups as well. Unfortunately, my healing has been part of her trauma as well, right? So her seeing this process has done her damage. And then her being just married to an alcoholic has created damage for her. So it's been challenging the whole time. She's, we love each other dearly, and we're in this fight together, and we both know that, and we both communicate that very regularly. But there have been times that, I definitely thought that it was over. So I'm so appreciative that she's still here with me and taking this journey with me. So it's been a lot of fun, and we have two beautiful children as well. That I think their relationship with me is improving on a daily basis.
Well, obviously when they see you making change, it's a different. So the book then, it's reclaims sobriety, 12 rounds, and the 12 rounds obviously because of the boxing connection. Yes. So what exactly You might let people know what exactly you're covering.
Yeah. So, it's really struggling because I did not intend to write this book. This is not the book that I went out to start writing 5 years ago. When I started writing the book, it's when I was telling a story about the gym and that kind of thing. And then I sent it to the editor and he kicked it back. He's like, this isn't good. I'd said it, this kept happening. He's like, you got to choose. Like, is it boxing? Is it drink? What is this about? I'm like, it's an introduction to me for anybody that wants to know who I am. He's like, it's got to be one or the other. So when I got these kids and I started training them, I did not want to train these kids. I kept kicking. I'm like, I don't know, train kids. I don't even know anything. I don't know the first thing about training a kid how to box. I'm not that good of a boxer. I could train people on fitness, right? But I'm not that great of a boxer to be teaching you how to do it was my mindset at the time. But the gym wasn't doing great, right? Some of the same problems that the previous owner had. Men of my age don't typically box, right? They get hit a couple times, they get a black eye, they have to go to work and explain it, and their wife says, hey, I don't want to pay for another urgent care for a broken nose. So, but I've got these kids banging on my door every day saying, teach me how to box. So one day I was like, screw it, show up Saturday, we'll figure this out. And then like 8 kids show up, and then 10 more show up, and this keeps happening. So I've got to figure something out, right, for these kids. And I reflected on when I was a kid, the local business owners that I would kind of pester, and they would help me out, and they taught me a lot as a young man. So I'm very grateful now that I get to be that role for other people. So I'm like, well, I got to figure this out. So I start taking every coaching class that I could think of. I get my USA boxing certificate. I go to high flow coaching. I get some neuro-linguistic programming coaching in. I get my breath coaching certificate. And I'm going through all of these things, and I'm learning about mindset. I'm learning about subconscious and changing that, and manifestation, and all of these other, crazy concepts in a lot of ways. But when you really start getting into it, you understand what, the science behind them, things really start to change. And I'm like, well, these kids that are coming in and they have fear and they don't want to be embarrassed and all these things, I've got to figure out how to get their mindset ready, because they say they want to compete, right? They want to get in the ring. And I've always valued opportunity as very high, right? So if I can if I can give somebody the opportunity that they want, I think that's probably one of the best gifts that I could give somebody. So went down that path, and I had some pretty massive realizations about myself and the programs that I was in, and where their gaps were. And by no stress imagination, by knocking any of these groups, right? I was in AA at 13, was my first time in AA. And, I'm a huge fan of smart recovery, and I do really like recovery Dharma. But they've all failed me in different places. So when I sat down to write Reclaim Sobriety this last time, I wanted to let people know that, one, I don't care how bad your alcohol addiction is. I mean, I've been addicted to other things, but I've not had some of the opioid addictions that I hear are much more challenging. That if I can quit, that anybody can quit. And not if I can quit. I can quit and become happy about it and have the mindset of, no, I'm a sober person, or in the book, we call them sober gladiators. And I have power there, and I can now walk into a happy hour, and when somebody offers me a beer, I can say, no, I'm sober. And I could be proud of that, instead of this weird, like, we live in a society that when you say, no, I don't drink, like, it's so freaking bizarre, that you're embarrassed by that. And so I felt that was, reclaiming sobriety felt very empowering to me, that no, I'm claiming this is what I have, and this is what I'm bringing to the table, and I've got my past experience. So I framed the book as a fight, is what I would take one of these kids through. We have the weigh-in as the first chapter, then we have 12 rounds, then we have the press conference. But those 12 rounds are the core values that we created in our gym for the Box STL Gladiators, and now we have the Portland Gladiators. We're growing the team nationwide, so that's a lot of fun. These sets of core values, 12 core values that we created for the team. Stuff like don't talk about it, be about it, always be ready, treat every person you interact with like you would like them to treat you. And we made each one of those a chapter. Tried to assimilate them as much to the AA steps as possible and associate those to it. So each chapter then becomes what the core value is, how I'd assimilate that to one of the AA steps, and then a personal story about how I used that core value in my own life, and then a tool to help you execute that core value in your life. And the concept there is that we just need a big toolbox to get the job done that we need, and not all the tools are going to work for every scenario. So I just wanted to give people an enjoyable way to absorb a lot of different tools, so that they could maybe try to execute some of them in their own life.
No, I mean, most people are familiar with AA, but you mentioned two of the others. I haven't heard of them before. What's the difference? You might kind of just give me kind of brief what the difference between the same.
Where I feel the missing points were for me, right? And they're not for everybody, because these programs work 100% for a lot of people. AA had the concept of I have to give up to somebody else. I have to give my will over to God. And if it's God's way for me to be sober, then I'll be sober. And if it's not, then I won't. And that I just had, I know my God. I've met him. He does not participate in my daily life, right? And I just have a hard time say that I'm not in control of that and owning that whole thing. It was a struggle for me to do that. So it failed me there. And what AA does really well, I didn't have that problem. I was a known alcoholic. I did not have to admit it. I did only not admitted it. I was proud of it, right? It was a badge that I carried very proudly. So that aspect of AA didn't apply to me because it just didn't. And then I could not give up control to somebody else. Smart recovery is self-management, right? So it's all about self-control and you. But it's good. They have the moderation mindset. So if you want out of moderation, they try to practice abstinence, but moderation's accepted in Smart. And that's not something I can deal with. I can still I use Smart for my meetings, but I do not engage in moderation at all any longer. And nor do I believe that it's, I don't think that it's a healthy mindset to stay into when somebody's in this position. So, it's out. Then recovery dharma, it's a Buddhist practice. It's more of mantras and just some of the Buddhist practices that, there is suffering and you will have suffering, but then there's a way to break away from that suffering, and you're capable of doing that. So it's more about letting go of your expectations, your ego, and those kind of things.
When you experienced alcoholics as a child, then your own kids experienced you. I mean, you might see it in, say, the gym and stuff like that, but I know it's international, it's massive scale, because even when I grew up, there was a load on the street of alcoholics. It's like, I see it here in Poland as well. I'm Irish, and I moved to Poland. Does everyone know somebody that's an alcoholic? But it's mainly for the kids. Like, how does a kid navigate when there's maybe one or both parents that are alcoholics, because it's so difficult for them, and sometimes they're seeing kind of a different household where everything is hunky-dory. So just with your story, what you've been through, how would you kind of tell the child that's going through that at the moment?
That it's not about them. And unfortunately, if you're a child living with a person that is struggling with alcohol or anything else, one, if it's violent, get out of there. Call social services. Living in a violent household will create triggers and things for you long term that are just unexplainable. So get out if you can. Like call your local police department and move into foster care if that's what you have to do if you're in a violent situation. outside of that, continue communicating as much as you possibly can. Alateen is a good program for teenagers that have parents of alcoholism, and find a peer group. Peer groups are huge as much as possible. For me, when I was a kid, I just tried to avoid my house as much as I could. Right? I just tried not to come home, but I had to go home and sleep. And I lived in a house to where, it wouldn't be uncommon for 30 or 40 people to bust to the door at 2 or 3 in the morning and start partying. Like that would be a common occurrence until I was probably 10 or 11 years old. So bear with it the best you can. It's only temporary, right? This is you'll get older. You'll be able to move out, and you have that option today if you really, really need it, right? Just start talking to your teacher or something. Say, hey, I need to find a different place to be, because your life is for you, and it's a beautiful gift that you have, and it's your responsibility to make it great.
Beautiful. Love it. And I didn't mention it to start. Well, I mentioned about the belt that I can see, but I just looking at the wall, and it looks like kind of Pac-Man or kind of Space Invaders, the guy on a skateboard. Now, it's a really cool background. So what's the story behind that?
I hate white walls. I hate average things, or just the plain thing. And I wanted to have, as video conferencing comes up more, this is my office. This is where I live most of the time. My studio is currently under construction, or I'd be in there, which is probably not as bright. I just wanted to have something behind me that when I turned around, it represented who I am, what I like, of me growing up and things like that. So I've got some books that I read. I've got, what is it? Stop Me, that's my book. Desire. What is that book? Think and Grow Rich. I have Think and Grow Rich open all the time to the Desire page. Because I think that's the spark of all inspiration, and making sure that you still are desiring things even as we get older, to go after, I think is really, really important. So, and I'm a kid of the 80s, so I thought that represented the 80s really well.
So you've done another book then with Kevin Harrington, Many Paths to Profit. Like, how did that come about? Because, I mean, he's not, like, he's well known. I mean, like a very famous guy. So that's, right. It's impressive that you do. So how did that happen?
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, I work on projects a lot. And so I run the data center daily, but the company that I'm a founder of and I'm the president of at the moment, one of the things that we have always done is we set 20% of our time off for innovation and creation and things like that. So I've been working on a startup project called PPGS, which is it's privacy policy grading. And so that the average person can read and understand a privacy policy of somebody they're doing business with, and long, boring stuff. But that got me booked on a TV show called The Blocks with Wes from The Challenge. And I did that TV show in January as a contestant, and the show got about 1 million views, and that just put me in line with to be seen by Kevin. And then he put together a group of 15 entrepreneurs, me and 14 other people, to write Many Paths to Profit. And it's just our stories. And I thought, for me, knowing that Reclaim Sobriety is going to be coming out in November, it was just a no-brainer to jump on board with Kevin Harrington to get this chapter done. So my chapter in Many Paths to Profit is all about redemption and recreation. And, you can live a life. And, I changed my life drastically at the age of 40. And it's been changing, pretty drastically every year since then, right? And I'll be 50 next year. I'll be 50 in May. So I wanted people to know that, one, in America, you don't have to ask permission to start your business. You can just go, right? And it doesn't matter where you come from, what your past is, any of those things at all. And today, specifically today, in this wild landscape that we live in, it's never been easier to do it. So, and just take that chance. If it's something you want to do it. And I go back to when I was a kid. I remember walking in the door as a teenager, like 14, 15, I'd come in and all I could picture my parents doing, and they were aging at this, starting to get a little older now. Party years were over, and all they did was like zombies sit on the couch and watch TV. And they would talk about the businesses they would maybe open one day. Right. And my stepfather finally did about a year before he passed away. He started a courier service that did very well. Unfortunately, he waited till the last year of his life to do that. And to me, that is such a crime against the life that you have, to sit and want something and not go after it. So, I just wanted to let people know that you don't have to do that. If you want something even a little bit, you can try it now. It's not that hard.
And I think, the young boys in the boxing club will benefit from an entrepreneur, and so that if they have a dream, you're not going to knock it like some of the teachers do, because unfortunately the teachers were afraid themselves and they tried to steal your dreams. So I think the opposite will happen if they open up to you about their aspirations of being entrepreneurial.
It is so much fun to have some of these boys that, and we've got boys and girls, but I don't currently have any girls that are doing this, like coming to me and help, hey, I want to start this business. And we talk, I've got one of the boys that now he cleans all the windows in we're in a big strip mall, probably 25 businesses. And he's the window cleaner for those 25 businesses now. Right. And, I absolutely love seeing that. And this is, a 15-year-old boy getting ready to turn 16. And, he can carve a path for himself that is completely different than a lot of people had before. So I think that is just an amazing thing to have. And I think in America, the only thing that we can ask for is safe passage of our life. And if you can do the kind of work that you like doing on a daily basis and not have to answer to anybody, I think is a great place to be.
Absolutely. So vendor review. So that's basically where people are getting the reviews that come in rather than the usual where they're posting it and you just assume that it's true. Is this like a third-party kind of validation system or?
Yeah, so vendor review is a branch of the privacy policy, and it's really boring stuff, right? So if you do business with the government at all, then you have to have, they're called trust principles. And one of the trust principles you have is a vendor review. So every vendor that you do business with, you reviewed their privacy policy and understood it. You reviewed the terms and conditions. You know when your contract's going to expire. So this is vendor review is for a company that has to review their vendors. And it's a tool to make that process very simple and audit friendly. If you've ever been in an audit, it is challenging to say the least, even when it's in your best interest. So vendor review is specifically for companies that have to review their vendors for some kind of compliance. Typically, it's the Sarbanes-Oxley or SOC 2, which nobody knows unless you have to do it. You don't know it, and it's super boring. But it's something that I get really nerdy about and passionate about. I think that, way off topic on technology side, we're living in a very dangerous place. And knowing what I know about American law and how it's created, and knowing that in America we have a right to privacy as long as we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, that as Americans are checking I agree to give you all of my data at breakneck speed, I fear that if it went back to the Supreme Court today, if the Katz case went back today and everybody said, oh, you can listen to me on a payphone, the Supreme Court might have ruled that differently, and we might not have the right to privacy if we have a reasonable expectation to it. Because I think on my phone, I should have my privacy. On my computer, I should have my privacy. There are things that I may need to do that are outside the preview of governments and other companies.
And you see it changing because, obviously, like even say WhatsApp is supposed to be encrypted. And somebody was asking me about a book. It was a Jim Rohn book. It wasn't a conversation. I never responded. And then I start seeing ads for Jim Rohn straight away. And it's like, and unfortunately, you have all these different apps, whether it's Facebook or whatever, and you just accept the terms because if you read it, you'd need a month anyway. It's like you do a degree at the same time. And the problem is you're giving away. Can you see it change? Because to be honest, everyone is talking about it. Like I could talk to you about, I'd love to go to Cyprus. Both of us in a minute now will see something coming up at Cyprus.
Yeah.
Like, that's a sad state of affairs that we don't have our privacy. Can you see it changing?
So I think I have a very big mentality, and you can tell by this, by my checking my liver counts on a weekly basis, was if you can't manage it, you can't. If you can't monitor it, you can't manage it. So right now, I think one of the problems, and it's the best problem, is you can't look at a policy of a company that you're going to do business with and have any kind of expectation that you read and understood that document. So what we're doing is we're using AI to read, understand, and then grade that document. So A through F based on what it means to you, so that you can kind of look deeper into it, right? And we grade on things like user control and readability. Is this document something that a ninth grader would understand if they read it, right? Or would you need a legal scholar to understand this document, which I think is deceptive practices. So the goal here is what we're doing right now is we're providing services to some companies for that vendor review process, but gathering privacy policies from every website that we can get a hold of, reading them, understanding them, analyzing them, creating summaries and grades. And right now we're still building that database. And then we're coupling that with the publicly released breaches, putting all that data together so that companies can make a more educated decision when they're doing business with a third party.
Just curious, have you any plans of including insurance companies in that? Because their policies, like, they'll take your money left, right and center, but when it comes to payout, they have every trick in the book. And I'll explain why I'm saying that. I recently took my son to Spain on the second day. The car got broken into. They took everything, the passports, all our bags, the whole lot. And I had, with the Revolut that I've got, there's covers. And I read through it and I said, okay, you get this passport and all this. And they just basically said, nah, you're not covered. I read through the whole lot beforehand to make sure when I make the claim, I took this right. And it's like, in the first part, they're saying what you're covered for. And in the second part, an exclusion, you're not covered for. And it's like, you're not covered at all. And it's like, why are you paying for this? And there's hundreds of stories of people that every time they try to get a claim, it's like they'll take your money, but they won't pay it out. So that's why I'm curious, because that's one that they need to be kicked down.
Yeah, I'm working with another friend of mine that's working on a policy, just an overall policy tool to help understand, really just give summaries of the policies, right? Are there any contradictory terms, things like that? Where it really clicked to me is, and I don't know the stance today, October 29th, 24, a Ford coming off an assembly line tomorrow will have approximately 17, just a factory Ford F-150, about 17 different devices that are going to collect data on you from different manufacturers. And Ford has made this claim that they hand over data to authorities at request. No court order, no documents at all, right? So completely bypassing due process. So what this means in reality, to a kid that's lived on the internet and understands how to move things around, that a local mayor could request Ford the documents through the legal system of somebody that's running for mayor next term, maybe the sheriff, and get all that information and have all that without going through due process, right? And that problem is only going to continue to get worse and worse as the Internet of Things enters our life and we click I agree with complete abandon, right? Nobody cares that, if I want to get this thing, I have to agree. I believe, only time will tell, that if something popped up beforehand and said, hey, this privacy policy has an app, this company's been known to sell data to third parties or use it against you, I think that a percentage of people would maybe not click.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, like, if you go to the car one, because, they're trying to bring in this 15-minute cities and stuff like that. There's stuff in the cars now that can stop you going a certain speed. They can turn off the car. So if they decide we're not driving on Sunday to save the climate, or you can't go to a certain zone, they can do that. People don't realize that's in the car. And that's something like from 2016 that they've incorporated that. Like, that's scary. That's scary. So, like, you're nearly better off with the old-fashioned car than the new modern one with all the bells and whistles on it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's on the other side of the fence. If you're never doing anything wrong, why do you have to worry about all those things? But we do live in a world where we have authoritative governments, and there's times you need to escape, right? And you need that's all potential, really, things that happen in our world, right? We literally have a world where people have parachuted in to create crazy violence and chaos. So, having these restrictions, I want to be able to, at all times, I want to be able to be capable of defending myself, and having the fight that's brought to my door if I need to have it. So, and I want to do that under the laws, right? So it's challenging, very challenging. And when companies are just giving away data like that, it's dangerous. It's irresponsible.
And it's an international thing. It's not just in the States. The other company then, Hostirian, is it? Hostirian?
Hostirian is the data center. So that's my, I'm a co-founder of Hostirian from 2000. And so that's the flagship company that does 90% of all of our business. And the other startups are kind of fringe, trying to get them up and going. That methodology has worked for us for a very long time. Hostirian has the infrastructure side, so we own and operate the data center, which gives us the ability to try these other offshoot startups. Obviously, creating a startup that analyzes every privacy policy in the world and grading it is an undertaking that is only slightly insane, right? Don't know where the revenue is going to come from, all these things. But I think it's important that the world have something to look at a policy and understand it quickly, or at least make a gut decision if they're going to move forward. So Hostirian has afforded us to do that. We've had some really phenomenal startups that we exited over the years. I just now getting back into the software game. We've been under non-compete for software for business, and that was lifted in 2018. So that's when we started thinking about software again. For about 10 years, we could only do infrastructure for our contract with one of our exits. So I'm back into trying to build software for the world to be a better place.
No, that's well up there. Yeah, excellent. And making the world a better place. I mean, obviously your book, but you've got the podcast as well, so you might let people know what's the name of the podcast and what exactly you're covering.
Clicks and Bricks podcast is only on YouTube at the moment. We took it down from all the other platforms about a year ago for some contractual reasons. I had gone on to C-Suite Network, and it was a sandbox that I just didn't play well in. So when I left the network, we lost all those other channels, but we maintained the rights to YouTube the entire time. So it's still up on YouTube, and it will be forever. Not sure if I'm going to start it again or not. I'm having kind of fun doing the other side of the fence right now. So the concept for Clicks and Bricks podcast was, I'm a fan of Main Street America. I think it needs to be there, but I don't know what it looks like over the next 10 and 20 years. So I just wanted to talk to as many business owners as I could and founders about how they started their business, what aspects of the brick and mortar do they pull into the online or vice versa. I think it's going to be a challenging time for Main Street over the next 10 years, but I also believe that we're going to see some really, really cool concepts come up. I think, really catered restaurant styles and things like drone soccer are going to be coming to fruition. And I just see that the mix of online retail with your brick and mortar store is something that's going to really help a lot of small business owners over the next 10 or 20 years if they do it correctly. And what does that look like? What does that mean?
So we're talking about like privacy and stuff like that, but the same with the podcast, because Like I had one that was removed from Spotify not so long ago. YouTube, they've removed channels from me. I had a crypto one, I got no strikes. They just removed it. A year later, they gave it back. They said, we've reviewed your channel, and they just bring it back. And you're like, and it's sad that they're controlling that. And then you're tiptoeing around what you can talk about, even if you're 100% sure. And then you see people regurgitating lies, and there's no problem. They're getting millions of views. And it's like,
Yeah. And I had a Medium post removed recently for hate speech. And I'm like, well, that I didn't have any hate speech. I just expressed my opinions as my opinions, right? So the online world is looking more and more like a dystopian government every day. And it's scary. I grew up, the internet, without the internet, my existence probably would not be. The technology gave me a voice, gave me a way to communicate with the world, gave me a way to create that I wouldn't have had without it. So it's really sad, the restrictions that are being put on it. And I understand why, for safety and all that other stuff, but all of us outliners need a new place to play.
Again, thoroughly enjoyed it. What I love is you're helping the children in the boxing ring. You're helping people that are going through addictions, so like there's a load that you're doing. And now with the privacy, that's one that I'm very interested in. Keep me in the loop in that. I think that's actually a brilliant idea, because most people, they just don't have the time to do that. So I wish you super success with that. You might let people know how they can contact you.
Yeah, so for the book, it's until November 19th. It goes live on November 19th. Until then, if you go to reclaimsobriety.com, just give me your email address so you can have a free copy. I'm just asking for a review on Amazon once it becomes available to the public. That's all I'm asking for, and that's a free copy. If you want to know more about me or any of the other businesses, kencox.com is my website. You can, I blog there from time to time, and, it's my playground. So not a whole lot there, but if you want to learn more about me, that's where you can.
Sure, I put on the links, but the audio in the video. Thank you very much, Ken.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. Make sure you give Ken a 5-star rating as well on his YouTube channel. And let us know what you thought about what we discussed. We'd love to read your comments. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour, help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.